throughout this presentation, there are many facets to this crisis, and this current supply-side shock on the face of it increases the incentives to transition away from fossil fuels, to go to renewable energy. And indeed, already in 2024, renewables were cheaper in 91% of the cases than the cheapest newly installed fossil fuel-based alternative. This is the utility scale, not the individual producers. So the case for renewable energy seems to be quite simple and straightforward. Unfortunately, that's not the case. As always, there are always some buts and howevers and neverthelesses. And I will try to explain what is going on from the point of view of developing countries. Globally, fossil fuels still enjoy a 9-to-1 advantage in consumption subsidies over renewable energy. And this is even without including the unaccounted costs of climate damage that fossil fuel is producing. So the current setup of the policies in the world in general is favoring fossil fuels over renewable energy very heavily. And obviously this is a problem, and this skews the rules of the game towards the fossil fuels. Although we know that fossil fuels are increasing our global temperature and causing havoc in many countries. Almost all countries in the world have now had some sorts of disasters related to climate change. And probably the biggest symptom of that is what is going on with investment in renewable energy in Africa. Africa is home to 60% of the world's best solar resources, but is receiving only 2% of the global investment in renewable energy. And this shows the asymmetry in today's global economy. As Anastasia said at the beginning, in terms of trade, in terms of production, the global south, developing countries, have now reached over 40% and coming to 50% of the total. But in financial terms, and where finance is located, this is mostly developed world, and very few alternatives exist for developing countries. And this asymmetry explains why the cost of capital in developing countries is so much higher, between 6 to 12 times higher than what, for example, Germany, which is one of the countries with the lowest interest rate, admittedly, but the asymmetry is probably the biggest. So developing countries face very high cost of capital, and that's the reason why they have problems with transitioning to the new green economy. But to put this into a perspective with the development strategy and the catching up process, because if you want to develop, you are basically trying to catch up with those who have already much advanced compared to you. What we can see is here that over the more than 60, 70 years, East Asia was able to catch up to some extent with the US when we compare the GDP of these countries to the one of the US. But for other parts of the world, Latin America, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, no catching up. Actually, Latin America was better off in the 50s, 60s, and 70s than is today compared to the GDP per capita of compared to US. So catching up development is very difficult, and on top of that, now we have an additional problem. East Asian development strategies, which were the most successful strategies so far, are less available today as the world has changed. Nowadays, developing countries have less policy space, economies are more dependent on international capital flows, trade and investment rules are not conducive to creation of domestic productive capacities, and so on and so forth. But most important, this fossil fuel-based model, which was good for East Asia, if replicated by all developing countries, would take emissions and resource consumption way beyond the planet's ecological capacity. And unfortunately, we cannot go beyond the planet's capacity. So transitioning to a new techno-economic paradigm whose energy base is still not entirely decided is a biggest problem now. And we frankly don't have as yet a successful development strategy for the 21st century that would take climate change into account. Now, green transition is, in theory, the structural transformation that we need, during which low-emission industries will grow and high-emission industries will decline due to deliberate policies and technological changes. But the crucial part is deliberate policies, because the markets, as of now, are favoring investment in fossil fuels. And even the policies are geared towards fossil fuels because fossil fuels are subsidized so heavily compared to renewable energy. So the path to structural transformation for developing countries was full of obstacles so far, and we are expecting developing countries to embark on this rapid green transition without sufficient international support. This will not going to work, unfortunately. Because green transition is just one of many challenges of developing countries. They have also other challenges like rapid industrialization, providing employment to youth population, especially in Africa, managing rapid and chaotic urbanization, adapting to impacts of climate change, etc. So structural transformation and green transition are necessary, and there is quite a lot to gain from that kind of transition. Energy transition and emerging circular economy will reduce the carbon footprint of both traditional and new sectors. And it is very desirable to have structural transformation in this new direction, because it decouples economic activity from natural resource use. It reduces the quantity of new resources. It potentially operates at low scale. So you can, for example, with solar energy, you can have even on your rooftop. And is more equally distributed than fossil fuels. And this is probably the main, I would say, focus right now, that if you want to have some sort of independence from what is going on in the on the energy markets, and they can be disrupted quite easily, you have to have some sort of domestic production of energy. And as we have seen, Africa is home to potentially huge resources of solar energy, but is not able to do that. According to some studies, Africa can produce 1,000 times more energy than their current energy needs are. 1,000 times means that Africa potentially can cover the energy needs of the whole world. But this will not happen if international community does not provide support for these structural transformations, as we call them, just transitions in developing countries. With high cost of capital and very big upfront investment needs in renewable energy, many developing countries just cannot afford to embark on that path. So it is up to international community to provide meaningful support for developing countries on that path. And this is something that we are working on and trying to figure out how climate and development goals can be achieved by developing countries at the same time. Not to postpone green transition, because if you, as I already said to the delegate from the Equatorial Guinea, if you count only on fossil fuels for your development, at some point in this century, your whole economy will might become stranded, and we don't want to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Igor, for your presentation. Let's go to questions, comments.